Hi there, I'm Catherine Lundoff. I'm a writer, editor, and publisher from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I run Queen of Swords Press. Queen of Swords is a small genre fiction publishing house that I started in 2017. I was traditionally published until then. I still am traditionally published for some of my other work. Um, we started out with 4 of my backlist titles, and then I started signing some other authors. We publish science fiction, fantasy, horror, a little bit of romance, some steampunk, and some undefinable stuff. We've got a couple of titles forthcoming this year, so I'm going to talk about some of the backlist titles, and then I'll move into what's coming up next. My novel, Silver Moon, is about a group of women in a mythical Western state who discover that as they enter menopause, they turn into werewolves. And the protagonist, Becca Thornton, is in the process of coming out as bi as well as coming out as a werewolf during the course of this book. And so it's about life changes and transformation and coming out at midlife and found family and werewolves. Book um, Book 2 is coming out on Monday, so 3/15, and this is Blood Moon. And this one is told from the perspective of both Becca and her girlfriend Erin, who's also her next door neighbor and in the werewolf pack, because that's how FF relationships roll a lot of the time. So that'll be out on Monday, so please look for it out. Then it's available for pre-order right now. I should say all of our books are on sale at Smashwords today. The sale ends today, but they're available everywhere else, your local indie bookstore, all of that good stuff. So amongst the authors that I signed when I first started out, my second year of running the publishing house was Alex X. Alex also writes for Angry Robot as Alex Wells. And Alex had this terrific series of steampunk adventure stories that they had written a while back and under their previous name. Alex IDs as non-binary and trans. And I'd read them in their earlier incarnation with the previous publisher, loved them, said, hey, at some point, if you want to talk about re-releasing these, because the previous publisher had folded, let me know. So we talked about it, and voila. The first of these books is Murder on the Titania, and it's a linked series of novellas set in Colorado, Utah, in a steampunk environment that has airships and steam rail cars, and the protagonist, Captain Marta Ramos, is a Latina steam rail pirate, and she has a sidekick named Sims, and they have sort of a Holmes and Watson-esque, witty banter relationship. Um, Captain Ramos also has a love interest slash romantic foil, and that would be her. This is, what is her name? Crap. Sorry, lost my train of thought there for a second. Um, anyway, love interest, foil, all that good stuff. So there's a bit more romance in this one. This one really doesn't have any romantic contact except they meet and they have a brief connection at any rate. So we call the tagline of these airships, piracy, murder, and the occasional cup of tea, and they are a lot of fun. Book 1, Murder on the Titania, was a Colorado Book Award finalist. Book 2, Wireless and Other Steam-Powered Adventures, was a Midwest Book Award finalist. So, people thought highly of them. And Alex and I are both going to be appearing at Tucson Steampunk Weekend's Community Weekend next weekend. So if you're next month. So if you're into steampunk, please check out Queen of Swords press feeds, and we'll, check out our various events, because we we do a lot of them. The same year that I put out Murder on the Titania, I had edited a couple of previous anthologies, but I hadn't put one out under Queen of Swords. So I decided that I was going to edit an anthology of pirate stories. So this is a collection of 15 pirate stories. It's called Scourge of the Seas of Time and Space. And it's fantasy, science fiction. There's some historical fiction in it. All kinds of pirates. There's straight pirates and gay pirates and lesbian pirates and bi pirates and all the pirates. Um, and this was really fun because one of the things I did was, because pirates are pretty much a universal phenomenon, I was trying to get lots of international submissions, and I ended up with the final table of contents has authors from, I think, 10 different countries, and lots of cool variety to be found. Some of the familiar names that some of you might recognize, Jyn Hale, who's won a bunch of awards for her books and is one of the folks behind Blind Eye Books, has a story in it. AJ Fitzwater, who I'll talk about in a minute, has a story in it. John Cannon, who writes for Suspect Thoughts and has written for a couple of web serials, also has a story in it. Lots of good stuff, lots of range of things going on, lots of adventure. So one of the stories that came in was this marvelous story about a dapper lesbian capybara pirate by an author named AJ Fitzwater, who's from New Zealand. And I read it, fell in love with it, included it in the final lineup for Scourge of the Seas of Time and Space, then went back to AJ and said, you know, I know there's at least one more of these stories out there because I've seen it. How would you feel about doing a collection of them? So I had started this line of minis, which are these shorter collections. They're about 40,000 words. They're a little, you know, they run about half the price of the regular trade paperback size books. So this one is $10. And what I'm doing with these is making these kind of an intro to new authors. So this was AJ's first collection and first book. My book designer, who is local to me, does fabulous things. So there's, you know, all the tentacles, because one of the characters is a sentient squid named Agnes. And there's just like all these marvelous little details. So this came out last year, right before lockdown, and I'm in Minneapolis. So it was right before things really blew up in Minneapolis. For those of you who may not have, you know, been aware of this or live elsewhere, the police murdered George Floyd 4 blocks from our house, and we're about a mile off Lake Street. So there were riots and fires and protests and all kinds of stuff going on for a while. So while this was going on, we were busy trotting around going, hey, we put out a new book, which was, you know, kind of intense. The cover is by a Minneapolis artist who does cover art under Ruby Diane Arts, and just does fabulous work. So I really recommend, if you're looking for a cover artist or a book designer, that these are great people to work with. And anyway, so right now, The Voyages of Sinrak ended up being our only title last year, because last year was last year. And it's currently on the recommended reading list for the Locus Awards. That's the one Locus Magazine puts out. Its stories in it have been nominated for the Hugo and the Nebula, and it's nominated for a Lambda right now. And it's up for the Ursa Major Awards, which are the awards for anthropomorphic fiction. Also a couple of other things I can't talk about just yet, but they're really cool. And it's a marvelous book, and I highly recommend it. We're calling it our little bundle of queer joy. And Alex is doing, rather AJ is doing amazing stuff right now, and has appeared at multiple literary festivals in New Zealand, and is currently appearing, has a writing residency as a mentor at the Christchurch New Zealand Writers Center. So our other titles include some of my short fiction. One of these was the Out of This World, which is a collection of my queer speculative fiction. Came out the first year that I started the press, back in 2017. And that's, you know, basically 12 stories worth of mostly queer fantasy, some things that are a little darker edge. It's kind of a tasting menu for my shorter work. Unfinished Business is another one of the mini series, and this is my horror and dark fantasy. Some of it's queer, some of it's coded queer, some of it isn't queer. So to the extent that I write anything straight, this is kind of a little bit of that. So this came out in 2019, and so right before Sinrac. The other things we publish include works by Emily Byrne. And Emily Byrne is erotica and erotic romance, primarily FF, some variations, some other things, but mostly FF. So that's 2 ebook collections, Knife's Edge and Desire, and this novel, Medusa's Touch, which is a science fiction romance, erotic romance set in the far future. So next up, because this year is already pretty full and exciting, I'm going to be publishing another author. So after Blood Moon, later on this summer, I'm going to be publishing an author named Rem Wigmore, who's also from New Zealand. And Rem's book Fox Hunt is it's a hope punk post-apocalyptic novel with a trans protagonist. And there's lots of fun and interesting things going on. The world building is really rich and really detailed. The characters are very compelling. I think people are really going to like it. I'm very excited about that one. And in the fall, we're going to be releasing Jenny Galaboy's first book. And Jenny is a local author to me that lives here in Minnesota. And one of the things that I'm hoping to do is I want to start a line of upper northern Midwest authors of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And this won't be an explicitly queer line. Like there are some gay characters in obviously Aliens, which is the working title right now. But that's not the primary story. The primary story is actually about these people ending up on this road trip with aliens and wacky hijinks, and it's a comic science fiction novel, and it's a lot of fun. And so really looking forward to that. So that'll be the winter book. And then for next year, I'm hoping to do a Kickstarter this summer to do some audiobooks. We'll probably focus on our bestsellers then. So that's Silver Moon and Murder on the Titania and Sinrac for starters, and then we'll see how other things go. And looking at doing another anthology, which will probably be out next year. There's a couple of other things that came in through submissions, and we're waiting to see what turns out there. But yeah, so I'm looking to do about 3 books a year going forward. The first year I did 4 books, and since I also work full-time and I teach writing classes for Cat Rambo, and I do my own writing on top of all of that, I kind of didn't get a lot of sleep, and not doing that again. So as long as I'm working a full-time job, we cut it back down to 3 books. I have an assistant who's part-time who works with me on things. We work with a designer who's a book designer, is also a writer who I know from a writing group. We work with different artists. So the artist who's going to be doing Fox Hunt, for example, is an award-winning artist from New Zealand. Really looking forward to seeing what she comes up with, because her work is just really spectacular. We've had great luck with cover artists. I mean, really pleased with all the people we've gotten to work with. And so everything else is kind of on a contractual basis. We're hoping to do some sequels. I'm trying to talk some of our authors into doing sequels to the books we already have out with them. So hopefully we'll have something more of those coming up down the pike. And there's a few other things floating around in the woodwork that I'm hoping will come to fruition. But yeah, so please stay tuned. We have a newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter on our website. I put the link in the chat. We're out on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all of that good stuff. And we distribute broad, so pretty much every platform has got at least some of our books on it. And we'll be doing more of that going forward. And yeah. So thanks so much. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. And I will stop by the Discord after this. And I'm going to turn it over to the next vendor, who I think is going to be Transmedia Watch, unless that's changed. And we'll go from there.
Hello, can people hear me? Oh God.
Yes, you sound good.
God, I'm now trying to get my picture up there, or to get me up there, but
if you go down to start video, I turned mine off so I wouldn't be distracting, but if you go down to start video on the lower left-hand side.
I just did, and it doesn't seem to want to do it. Oh, this is... start video. Right, let's... Oh, real apologies to everybody here. You can just see my face. I've not done this before. My name is Jyn Hale. I'm from Transmedia Watch. Can I share a bit of a presentation, and then I'll talk to people towards the end when I've got the when we've got past that. How do I share it? Share screen. Right, that should be coming up. Oh, for God's sake. Right. Whoever is acting as the moderator, if you can just tell me if everything is going okay, because I don't really know what's going on right now.
It looks good.
Thank God for that.
It's
That's
perfect.
me, Jyn Hale, writer, comedian, and professional nuisance. I wish I'd known much more about your organisation beforehand, because I also like fantasy and I would love to have a conversation with you afterwards. However, I am here today on behalf of Transmedia Watch. We're a UK charity and we're about ensuring trans and intersex people and related issues are represented with accuracy, dignity and respect in the media. I think that sort of, I sometimes forget to say that, but you know, if you call Transmedia Watch, it's about the media. I don't know how far people are aware of what has been going on in the UK, but the UK, in terms of queerness, transness, you name it, the UK is increasingly and uniquely hostile to trans identity. I mean, there are other places around the world, and I wouldn't put us on a par with some of the places where you can go to prison just for being trans, but the climate here is revolting. A number of my friends have now left the country because they are scared of what is coming, and increasingly around the world, the UK, when it comes to trans and LGBT rights, is being seen as more like Hungary or Poland, or potentially maybe where the United States we've gone had you had a different election result. It is not good. Drivers around public discourse, I don't want to get into it because it's very, very long history. There's a certain element of what's called radical feminism, which isn't really a large part of it. There's a lot of women around who've suddenly discovered politics in the same way as some people get religion, and they have decided they're radical feminists. They're not. They are simply using that as a cover for, I think, expressing past hostility. And really what is going on here is massive funding from the Christian right, from the same sort of organisations that are now putting forward anti-trans bills in the United States, who were anti equal marriage, and who are anti abortion rights for women. And they have this theory, gender theoria, which is that there is some massive plot by trans people, LGBT people, and the good radical feminists, we're talking about Judith Butler, to overthrow the family. And once we've overthrown the family, we can all bring in a communist state. It is absolute nonsense. I find it hard to believe that people can actually genuinely believe it, but who knows? I don't know. They focus on concerns, which you've probably seen more recently, probably seen concerns about sport. There's lots of anti-trans in sport bills in the States. In the UK, they go on about women's spaces and erasure of women, because the 1 in 1,000 women in the UK who are trans are working very hard to erase 999 other women. They do a sort of, I think it's bait and switch, isn't it? That they talk about male violence, about men who pretend to be trans, and then they go on about trans people. And academic freedom, free speech is quite a big thing, as is the claim that they're not at all transphobic. Trans people are being pretty much completely now erased from public life. We have virtually no presence of our own in the media, and the number of places where trans people feel safe is shrinking. It's not pretty. A large part of this is due to the media, and so in a way you could say it's because Transmedia Watch has failed, but it's us, which is sort of about 3 of us plus volunteers, versus the UK's entire media industry. For a long time, coverage in the UK was, I would say, anodyne. For 40 years or so, it was moderate and neutral, although there was virtually no coverage of transgender in that time. From 67 onward, we went into what I call freak show mode, where every story was a sensation, the language misgendered, they talked about sex change and sex swap, and they dead named. There's a lot of very sexualized focus, and trans people are always depicted as fakes and frauds, or deviants and perverts, and the press always excused themselves because this was in the public interest. It probably wasn't, but you know, and there's a good example of it. If I had more time, I'd take you through this piece, but what is very interesting, of course, just look at the subheads in this. This is, I think this is, yes, this is Caroline Cossey, who now lives in the States, and she was outed by the press. She was a successful James Bond model. Nobody knew she was trans until she got outed, and what basically happened was this piece. And look at the subheads: fake, shocked, sex change secret. This is what the press used to do. And it still does a little bit of it, can, but it's moved onward from that sort of language. What has really happened, and let's whiz through the 90s and the 2000s, is that things were going okay until around 2017 when the onslaught began, and it really has been an onslaught. There's been some research. In 2 years, 2018 to 19, the UK press wrote over 6,000 articles about trans people. That's, yeah, I mean, given that the active binary trans population is probably 40,000, that's, we're getting about a fifth of an article each. That's pretty impressive. And the shift has been away from openly hostile and ridiculing towards very, very negative, denying the existence of trans children, denying the existence of transphobia, and increasingly trying to depict trans people as a threat. The Sun is one of the largest UK tabloid papers. I was involved in doing some analysis back in 2019, going through a selection of their stories, well, pretty much all their stories from that time. If you kick out the ones which are just press notices, it was 2/3 were negative about trans people. And I'm not going to go into that table, but what was very interesting was that not only was 2/3 negative, but in almost no cases in the negative stories were trans people given an opportunity to actually put their own point of view. Transmedia Watch, we've been involved in things like giving evidence to a major discrimination case in May 2019. Hacked Off, which is a sort of sister organisation, put evidence towards Parliament about media articles which were just transphobic or just inaccurate. And during a recent debate on upgrading the law for trans people, one national press outlet was trans favourable, the rest were very hostile. In terms of numbers of articles written about the trans community in this period, it was 2-to-1 against, but a very large number of those were in the LGBT press. Once you actually look at the national press and their readership, we're outgunned by 10 or possibly even 20-to-1. The amount, all of the top UK newspapers have it in for trans people, as have the major current affairs magazines. Other problems that we face, we can't object to group discrimination. If I were to say something rude about the editor of a major magazine or newspaper in the UK, they could potentially sue me for libel, and whether they could or couldn't, I wouldn't dare resist it because the costs would be absolutely intolerable. If they wish to publish a piece which sort of suggests or implies that trans people are deviants, I have no comeback. And they have now ruled that they're perfectly entitled to make up quotes if the quote is the sort of thing people would expect to be said. So reporting is not even now of what trans people say. In opinion pieces, which were a growing trend in the UK, the press regulatory body IPSO has claimed that these do not have to be factually accurate. Now, I have a problem with that, which is that if an opinion piece is expressing an opinion as to whether Joe Biden or Donald Trump is a good president, or whether Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer here are good party leaders, that is an opinion. But if I were to express the opinion that the moon is made of green cheese, that's going beyond. And if I start to express or to hide behind the idea of opinion, factually incorrect stuff about trans people, that shouldn't be happening. There is also significant institutional transphobia with the BBC, who are now very happy to run programmes discussing trans people without bringing trans people into the debate. Now, where I am on that, I'm just going to leave that up on screen for a second, but I'll put that information also into the chat, and I'm going to be around for questions. One thing I haven't answered here is, what does Transmedia Watch do? The answer is anything and everything we can support the media by giving them guides as to what is respectful. And that was very, very helpful in the days when it was all about language. But also what we have tried to do is to bring complaints, take part in public inquiries, train journalists, and also help ordinary trans people who find themselves the victims of the press, who are can you unshare my screen? Oh God, what's happening now? Right, can I come back to the meeting? I'm still here, I take it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to figure this out.
Oh dear. Well, I think if people want to ask some questions, do you want to throw them in at me whilst you're figuring it out? They might actually get to see my face. That would be. Huh.
Got it, sorry.
I don't mind. It won't let me start the video. Damn it.
Valerie has a question on what is something that we can do to help you.
I am the trans community generally.
Or Transmedia Watch.
Well, both. I was going to start with the general thing. International pressure is important. It is now being recognised internationally, globally, that something very bad is going on in the UK. The world's largest global body on this on LGBT rights. ILGA has now dropped the UK something like 10 places in the space of a year in terms of its LGBT goodness, and they're talking about dropping us another 5 spaces next year. We are plummeting in the ratings as a good place to be. And given that there might be more bandwidth from people prepared to listen in the States, pressure needs to be brought in the same way that bathroom bills in North Carolina were averted because of, I think, to some degree, business pressure. Businesses need to bring pressure to bear on the UK. Now, what Transmedia Watch is doing is we, along with other organisations such as Transactual, have identified pillars, if you like, within British society that are transphobic or working against us. What we're trying to do right now is to develop, to build alternative platforms, because one of the saddest things that I get all the time is people going, well, just put a piece in the press and then people will read the truth. We can't. There is virtually no major trans writer now writing for the UK press. We have been purged. So what we are trying to do, and this is one platform, and I'm really pleased to be here, even if I can't see you all, is to create alternative platforms where people are feeling confident to be themselves, and where we can critique what is going on. If you look at our Twitter feed, one of the things we do on a regular basis is we simply clip most of the major news stories, either of interest to people in the UK or that are about what is happening in the UK. If you see a news feed, what we talk about there and what we campaign for is press, firstly, that covers stories that are positive to us. Unfortunately, almost every story now it picks on the negatives, and that doesn't sensationalize or mislead in the headlines, but that actually gives voices to us. And I guess what I'm asking, and if there's any journalists out there, we absolutely need to be able to get platforms in places like the States, because we haven't got any platforms left here. I stopped. Question? Hello?
Next question. When trying to get quotes from trans people, there's always a fear that if one, you'll be outed in your life, and two, you'll attract negative repercussions or violence to yourself. How can trans people make themselves visible and still protect themselves?
To be fair, that is one thing which I don't see as being quite the issue yet in the UK. It's very difficult. The level of violence against trans people has absolutely taken off in the last 2 years. There's something like an 80% rise in violent crime against trans people since, I think, 2017. 80%, that's almost a doubling. But it doesn't seem to tie to the press and media. What is much more problematic is that the way most press and media are set up, most trans people now won't talk to the printed press because things get distorted. Again, if I had more time, I could show you pieces and show you how stuff gets distorted. And we've also pretty much given up on broadcast, because broadcast insists, no matter what is going on, in what they call balance. So whenever there's a trans person there, you've got to have an anti-trans person. And a good example of that is that they go on about, is it restrooms in the States, toilets, loos, and trans people in well, trans women in women's loos. Now, actually, there's a sort of debate there, I guess, between the minority of women, cis women, who don't like the idea, and the majority of cis women who really couldn't give a damn, because most people go to a loo to pee. They don't go there for any other reason. Well, not. I'm far too old and it's way beyond me, so I wouldn't know. But what keeps happening is the media keep putting a trans person versus one of these radical feminists who don't think trans women should be in women's loos. So you're not getting a balance. What you're getting is a false dichotomy. It's making it out that women and trans women are on opposite sides of the spectrum. So, if anything, our problem is that virtually nobody now will touch the media. The few people who tend to are, I'm afraid, the self-publicists, and some of them are very dubious in terms of their understanding, let's say, of the wider trans issues. I mean, without commenting adversely or positively, it would be pretty much as though the only spokesperson for trans people in the US was Caitlyn Jenner. And clearly Caitlyn is not typical or totally representative. And that's what's happening in the UK. We have virtually nobody there. So again, we need the alternative platforms. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks for, well, yeah, thanks for telling us all about the issues in the UK. I didn't know a lot about this, so I learned a lot. And our other vendor, is now here. We're just stamping, and so we're going to move on to their slot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. If anybody still had any questions, I didn't want to jump in. I just came in early to make sure I could get in the screen okay. But otherwise, I have a PowerPoint, and but let me, did anybody, I just want to make sure you had enough time to finish. Okay.
There's no more questions in the.
Okay. I'm like 3 minutes early and I feel terrible. Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. Let me just share. Not the. Here we go. Sorry, technical difficulties. Like, just trying to get my PowerPoint. There we go. Okay. Present, not share. Okay, I'm sorry about that, everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying the conference. We're changing gears a little bit because I'm going to be talking about my little side business where my name's Kathy. I'm from New Jersey, and I sell Stampin' Up! Supplies, which are used for card making, scrapbooking, and all kinds of paper craft. And you're probably wondering, why the heck am I here? Why card making, right? Why? Well, 2020 happened. And I don't know about you, but I was having some trouble feeling creative, getting stuff done. And I needed a hobby that wasn't tied to a computer screen, because I was doing that doom scrolling thing, that let me be creative in a way I couldn't be with writing. And there was no pressure attached to it. I would make pretty cards and I would give them to my friends and family, and it wasn't perfect, and that was okay. They were still appreciative. So I didn't have pressure to be perfect. I could have fun. I could get that creative impulse out. And I want to show you some of the creations. The first 3 cards, I made some Pride themed cards. I'm hoping to give some of them away to some people. I have a form at the end. I'll put it in the chat. These are my 2 rainbow cards. I did make a trans pride card. I can also make bi pride, pan pride. I think I'm missing the right purple for ace pride, but I can make all kinds of, and this is all using the products that I'm going to be talking about today. And these are just some really neat cards that I made using gold. I love gold. I love glitter. I made so many gold and glittery cards just to make me happy. And then I did a whole bunch of these fun folds because once I started making cards, I needed to scale things up. So I just kind of learned how to do these really interesting things. And this is all with the products I'm selling today. All right, now why Stampin' Up? Now, when I started, I wasn't solely using these things, but I used, I went to Michael's, I bought the stamps there and the paper there, but the quality is actually a lot better. And the nice thing about it is the coordination, because I actually am not really an artistic person. I am not good with color. I cannot cut a straight line to save my life. But by using these products that are already coordinated, I had that extra, help. And it has something for all levels of crafters. If you're just beginning, if you're really intense and really want to make like those fun fold cards, they have the stuff too. But today I figure all of you are beginners. If not, that's cool. We'll talk about that too. But so I'm going to be talking about the paper pumpkin, which is how I started. It's a monthly subscription. There's different projects every month, which is really nice, and they're themed. There were Valentine's days in January. There were Christmas. There were summer themed, depending on the month. So it's really easy to build a stash of crafting products because you can make what's in the kit, or you can use the things for other stuff. But you don't need any other supplies. It's in the box, and it's pretty good value. It's $22 per month, or if you pay for a longer term. And you can skip a month. I skipped a month that I did not like the theme, so I just skipped. No big deal. And this is the kit that's coming out next month. And I just wanted to point out there's enough supplies to make 12 cards. And if you bought 12 cards in the the supermarket, they're like running $4, $5, $6. So you could not get 12 cards for $22. This kit is intended this particular month for kids and families. The theme is ice cream, and so cool, summery kind of theme. I hope it's actually ironic that rainbows are also the theme for this month as well. And this is to subscribe. I'll put this link. Well, when you see my last slide, I'll talk about it. So you can subscribe as me as your demonstrator. And I wanted to explain what that meant. What do I do as a demonstrator? So I run a YouTube channel and I post videos weekly demonstrating how to use the products. I'm looking into giving Zoom classes when I have some more people interested. So I have a Stamping 101 video series to get you started. My videos include alternates for paper pumpkin projects. I have blog posts with all the information to recreate the projects. I have a Facebook group where you can share your creations, and it's to build a little bit of community. And I really like making cards that are not quite typical, like not what people expect. And then access to the catalogs. Now, the only way to get a print catalog is to know a demonstrator. And they have one annual catalog, which is good for the entire year. And then they have 2 mini catalogs for a 6-month period. And then they run this really fun event. For every $50 you spend, you can earn free products during the 2 celebration events. And the nice thing about having it print, the catalogs are also, they're free online as well. You don't need to get a print catalog. But what's nice about the print is I page through them all the time for ideas, inspiration. I page through them during Zoom meetings when I'm working from home, things like that. So they're just really good for inspiration. And what's also good is that it was something to look forward to for me. So I knew, a new annual catalog is coming out in May. So that's something really exciting. Something to look forward to, a new catalog, something new to create, and to get excited and interested. So thank you for those of you who are still here. You've earned a picture of my dog. But also this is all my contact information. I'm going to put this form in the chat. And this is how you can win one of those Pride cards that I showed earlier. But you can also, if you want to request a particular card, as I said, I can do a couple of different ones. But the main point of contact is my blog, bridgesstamping.wordpress.com, where I link to my YouTube channel, link to my Instagram. So if you just want to look at my cards, you can do that. You can shop with me at bridgesstamping.stampinup.net. That's my YouTube channel. And then I'll put this copy link in the chat and exit out of here. Oops. And then I'm going to, thank you. I can see the chat now. Thanks for the compliment from my dog. Let's see, panels and attendees, paste. And it's just contact information. I can turn my screen on, and if you're interested in seeing some of my cards, I have them here. Hold on, let me start my video. Okay. Oh, I never turned my light on, so you don't see the darkness. There we go. Okay. So if you feel, yes, right, I was expecting the dog to show up and demand to be let out right in the middle of my presentation, because that's what he does. But I did want to show you the cards. So the Just Be You, inside it says, "You're outstanding." And the rainbow hearts, I haven't put a sentiment on the inside yet, but I can personalize that. And then I'm the trans colors, the pink and blue flag. And this also says, this is "Just Be You" in the front, and inside, "You're outstanding." So if you fill out that form, and there's a little checkbox that says, "I am just here for the cards." And what I'm going to do after the presentation is over, I will pick 3 people at random, and I will send you an email and send you one of the cards. Does anyone have any questions about anything, or would you like to see? Do you have questions about my background? I get that a lot. Would you like to see any of the supplies that I have here? I have a question. Yes, actually, they can be mailed with a regular stamp. The only time I ever got a card that was too heavy to be mailed was I had created this foil poinsettia that was huge, and I should have known better. It did not get mailed. But these can be mailed with a regular stamp, no problem. I will be mailing them to you in a mailer, so you can send them out. Good question. Oh, I have so many. I think that's a good question. Somebody asked me, I don't know if you can see in the chat, some of my favorite stamps. Oh, my absolute favorite one is the one I shouldn't show because it's retired. It's a unicorn. Here, this is my absolute favorite. The "Leave a Little Sparkle." It's because I'm bi, and I always say I'm a bi unicorn. So that's why that's my favorite. Absolute favorite. I just purchased, I love those of you who like dogs and cats. There's dogs and cat stamps. And then another dog stamp is Bella and Friends. You can see that, so cute. And then I had bought, this is the stamp set that I used. Oh yes, Bella and Friends. Oh, awesome. Yes, that's how I found it online. It's kind of like a black market for stamping up retired items that they sell them on Facebook groups and they exchange. That's where I got my retired items from. I bought the set solely because I thought the sentiments could be used for Pride cards. So the "Stand Tall and Stand Out," "Just Be You," "You're Outstanding." So that's why I have no interest in this flamingo whatsoever, but I thought the sentiments would be really good. Yes, retired items can be very expensive, but sometimes it's how the market goes. People are selling the celebration stuff for pretty cheap right now. Yeah, this is current in the current mini catalog, which is here. So this one goes until June. Like I said, if you're interested in the catalog, do that link in the chat. but the flamenco is current. There's some really good stuff in the mini catalog. And I bought, okay, this is an ice cream set. This coordinates with the paper pumpkin that's coming out next month. So if you're interested in subscribing, I talked about the stamp sets, but one of the things is they sell these really pretty designer paper. And so like the ice cream, I don't know if I can reach for it. The ice cream set came with this gorgeous paper. And so you can make, I've used so much of it already that I don't have too much left. And if you look at my YouTube channel, I did a video last week on how you can use the designer paper to make cards easily. One of the things I'm doing is trying to make videos where you don't need to buy a lot of supplies to make cards, because I know we're all on budgets, right? We don't have a lot to spend. But if you fall in love with like this ice cream set, I want to give you the tools that you can use to like, okay, you buy this, I can buy an ink. You need an acrylic block to stamp with. That's the nice thing about these, these stamp sets. They can be used. That's why they come like this, not just big stamps like when we were kids. So you attach them to the block and you stamp that way with them. Just the right color paper. And that's what I'm going to be doing with somebody said about making your own paper. This literally came in the mail today. It might be the subject of my next video. I bought these masks that are like polka dots, and I have blending brushes, and I'm going to use ink to make my own paper as a background. So that's probably going to be my next video. Maybe tomorrow, we'll see, maybe for this week. But yeah, there's so much you can do, and it's, okay, I'm sorry. But whatever you like, there is something in here for you. So if you like to stamp, if you like to cut paper out, I'm sorry, I will finish up now. I just want to see if I have one more question. No, I don't have. That was the only question I have in question and answer. Okay, I will round it up. Remember, I'll put my link in the chat, and I will wrap it up for now.
Yeah,
And thank you all for listening.
This is the last session of this until the break. So we're going to have an hour break in which Scott is holding a Zoom meeting if you want to chat face to face. And I'm putting the link into the chat now. But other than that, we are taking a break and starting up another vendor pop-up in after an hour. Makes sense. So yeah, thanks everyone for being here.